I'm just going to test the recording. Appears like it's working. And press stop it. Okay, let's get going. Welcome everybody to another session of the Open Publishing Fest. My name is Adam Hyde. I'm the founder of Coko, also founder of Book Sprints, which we'll be talking a bit about today. And the topic is emergency response publishing, and I have my colleague Barbara Rühling, from the CEO from Book Sprints, also joining me to talk about this a little bit. So I just want to outline this this idea, and it's something that I'm very keen to work on and build community around. And this is the first sort of airing of it. So let's go through it. Just first of all, a few details. If you want to contact me after this, you can email me at adam@Coko Foundation, and the Coko Foundation website is there as well. So just to outline the problem. Essentially, we have a problem in the current crisis of the pandemic, where we need to share research amongst researchers so that they can build on each other's knowledge towards some sort of solution or solutions. And there are two sort of responses that I'm seeing, and this is all anecdotal. Feel free to disagree with me if you see it otherwise. But there seems to be that traditional journal platform workflows are unable to cope with the volume of stuff that is required to be processed. And so, and journal workflows are generally pretty slow. And also we see another response where there are sort of preprint servers and informal networks forming that are sharing content, which that can do it very fast, but it's not peer reviewed. So we have two sort of problems. One problem in the traditional journal publishing world of not being fast enough, and the other problem in the preprints and the informal sharing of content, where content is shared fast enough, but it's not reviewed. And I just want to put a little bit of a pin on reviewing. Peer review, people have sometimes allergic responses to it. So I just want to avoid the term peer review, although that might be in fact what I'm talking about, who knows. But some sort of formulation of a review of content, I think, is very important in this context, so that we don't get garbage out there. So the point is that how would you go about radically optimizing journal workflows, or the sharing of content, if it's not in a journal, that is fast and enables some sort of review? So I'm really just I'm going to focus mainly on the journal workflows. What I'm calling radical optimization, I think, requires a couple of things. It requires tools and processes. And by tools, I mean literally, like software, things like this. Processes, I mean the way that we work, the things that we do to process documents. So radical optimization, in my opinion, with regard to the journal world, means being pretty brave. And there'll be a lot of allergic reactions to a lot of the things that I'm about to say, I think, within the journal world, because they're not things that are considered attractive when processing academic documents. But my point is, I think we have to be bold and get past those concerns and really start trying things. And I really believe that we can actually radically optimize journal workflows. We can get very good review systems in place and process documents extremely fast. But our legacy tools and processes get in our way, and not just that, but our emotional connection to those tools and processes. And in my experience, the hardest thing to do, actually, you can replace a tool, software. It can be pretty traumatic in itself, but the hardest thing to do is to change the culture, the work culture, how you work. That's extremely difficult. So these things can be very painful to consider, and they may seem, like magical thinking. And just by way of context, I've worked within the journal world for I'm not sure now, about 10 years or so. And before that, I came from outside publishing. So I have had in the past a naive perspective that, might have been guilty of magical thinking. But I have actually also now worked with inside the machine, so to speak, and I had to, for this purpose of trying to think about these things, zoom back out again and try and be naive to think about what is it truly that we would have to do to radicalize journal publishing. Because from inside the machine, you tend to, I was finding myself tending to step back from things that 10 years ago I would have thought it appropriate, because I sort of have all of these same sort of cultural concerns. But yeah, so essentially I had to, for myself, press the refresh button and send myself a little bit back in time, and then reality check it to see, is this really possible? And I really do think it is, but it takes a lot of guts. So what do we need to do? Well, essentially, we need to do a lot of mechanical things and a lot of process things, right? The first thing is that we have to move towards web documents. A lot of these things I'm saying here are not so new, but altogether, I think that they can be very radical, and there are some things here that contain a lot of nuance. So we have to kill Microsoft Word and get rid of it out of the workflow. I say Microsoft Word because it's about 90% of all journal content comes to journals in Microsoft Word, and it costs a lot of money, and it slows down the speed of processing on a number of fronts. First of all, by emailing Microsoft Word around, this puts lag time as a gated workflow. Everybody else waits where somebody has the document, but also the conversion factor as well on the other end. When you want to actually convert this for distribution, you have to, generally speaking, most journals send the content to a vendor. So it puts in a lot of time, extra time, unnecessarily, in my opinion, into the process. So we need to get rid of Microsoft Word, or at least we need to get out of Microsoft Word in an automated fashion and start working entirely within the web for the entire duration of the processing of a document once it's been submitted to its publication. So this means that everybody, the authors, the reviewers, the journal staff, they should all be working online in the same platform, in the same environment. So this is really necessary, because one of the things I'm going to touch on is that in order to really hit speeds of processing documents, you need concurrency, and standalone documents being emailed does not give you that concurrency. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but I'm going to flick soon to Barbara to talk about book sprints and sort of echo some of these things and look at the actual real world experience we have in radicalizing workflows when it comes to book production. So this stuff is not built on air. There's some reality to it. So you need to be able to work concurrently, get away from gated workflows, which are caused by working with Microsoft Word. You need modern workflow systems with modern real-time communication tools, because you're dealing with fast-paced processes. You need to be able to signal to people very quickly when there's something that they are required to do on the document. This requires modern notification systems in the platform, but also real-time communication tools like chat and video calls built into the system itself. And that has some other knock-on consequences, which I'll come to later, which is considering everybody a team and stop firewalling communication, treating authors as outside of the team in processing documents. We really need to simplify the workflow and as much as possible, so that there's few actors involved in the process as possible and they can work swiftly. And also that the workflow is ungated. And now what I mean by that is that typical journal workflows are very linear and very gated. One person has a role, they do this, and they do it at a specific time. In my opinion, in order to be able to achieve real pace and radicalize the speed, we actually have to enable each other to be able to work on the document at any time and pass tasks between us. So imagining if there was a copy editor involved, I'm just making this up as an example, if the copy editor had time to check for a data set while somebody else was reviewing the document, then they should be enabled to do that, right? So the point being is to think of the people that are processing the document, the authors, the reviewers, the publishing staff, everybody as one team that can fluidly work with each other. This, I think, is very difficult for journals to consider, especially when you talk about breaking down the barriers between authors and reviewers, who are largely considered a lot of times sort of outside of the publishing organization, and considering everybody working on a single document to be part of that team for that document processing. Another element of it, I think there needs to be a lot of work done on the assign and chasing of reviewers. This also slows down a lot of journal processing of articles. And I think thinking about reviewers as a network rather than individuals that get thrown invitations. So, you know, this is a high-level framing, but it could mean a lot of things, including had some recent very interesting discussions with the Organization for Human Brain Mapping, and they're thinking about, for micro-publications, making content available through a sort of a queue for the community to check and to look at and decide what they want to review. And I think it's a really interesting model, and there's a lot of stuff, once again, a lot of baggage that comes to this about conflicts of interest, or even sort of negative, deliberate, strategic, negative reviewing stuff. These are all possible, but I think that we need to get past the sort of glass half full kind of thinking for a while, and think about how we might be able to action this and try it out and see what the actual consequences are, rather than living in fear of them, which is, I think, actually a mode that informs a lot of the protectionist element of journal workflow management. I think we need to enable concurrent editing and action, so that you are literally all the people involved in the processing of an article are actually literally concurrently editing that content. This is, again, something I think is very difficult for many academics to stomach, because they have a real sense of proprietorship. Even if it's an open access document, they obviously feel ownership of it and very scared of somebody else coming in and changing the document. But I think we need to, once again, get past this. We need to think about a team of people improving a document and doing it as fast as possible. In order to do this, we need to be able to enable trust. We need to build trust, and we have to enable people to concurrently operate on a document. Everyone should be feeling as part of one team, is one thing I mentioned before. Now, this might sound like, yeah, everyone is a team, but I think I'm talking about something a lot tighter than what I've seen within the journal world. So something where people really feel like they are pulling together in fast fashion to all generously give each other trust and work at pace to share this, improve and share this information. And that requires a lot of social engineering. It's not something that comes about easily. Then, of course, we have to get into a mode of continuous publishing, so that, you know, content can be improved over time. I think this is a given for the future of publishing in general. And also, we have to get towards automated output. So what you are working on, and once you've improved the document, should either be a push button to distribution, or light tweaks to distribution that could be done by anybody, not by an XML expert. And one of the things I think which is a little bit longer term, I very much think that we should be working towards getting rid of JATs. I don't think there's any need with modern search technologies these days to require the manual markup of documents. I think if we can just automate the output strictly to HTML down the road, and have very sophisticated semantic parsing engines going through that content and making associations, I think this is going to render JATs irrelevant anyway. So, and one of the reasons I bring this up is that one of the big pain points for publishers is getting content out of Microsoft Word or any format and into JATs for distribution. So we need to get out of JATs, essentially. And once again, that can often bring a lot of discomfort. So these things are like, I've just run through them very fast. They are, you know, all together, they're bold. It means working in a very tight collaborative unit. sort of dissolving roles, being able to collaborate with each other, passing document tasks backwards and forwards in a fluid fashion, and getting away from the gating, unnecessary gating of access to documents when you're improving them. Now, the things to remember: if you're working within one system, everything's transparent. So it's a given that if somebody makes a big change to a document, all actors that are working as a team on that will be able to see that immediately, be able to look at the history and to be able to remedy that situation. So I think part of the fear about working in this concurrent fashion comes from this post-paper digital workflow that we have with Microsoft Word, that we hold on to this document and we just pass it at particular stages to somebody else. And at that point, we're trusting them just to do something very, very, very specific. So there's a lot of controlling and gating and very linear processes within that. And I think if we move to a concurrent environment where you can actually work, all actions are transparent, I think a lot of the fear that somebody actually might corrupt the document would, with practice over time, that fear would dissipate. And I'm saying this once again from not just sort of making it up, but from the position of having been involved in the radical optimization of book production processes and learned a lot through that. And I work with a lot of publishers to optimize their workflows. And I know this is possible. I know it's painful, it will be painful for publishers, but I know that it can be done. So I'm going to talk to two elements of this and sort of point to real world scenarios. One is processes, and Barbara will speak to book sprints and radical optimization of book production workflows. And then I'll talk a little bit about a technology platform that is one realization that could sustain such a practice. It's called SimpleJ, it's an open source project, and then we can have a discussion about this. So yeah, I'll throw it to you, Barbara.
Thank you, Adam. So yeah, my name is Barbara. I'm a book sprint facilitator. I was trained by Adam 7 years ago. I've been the CEO of book sprints now for 4 years. So what Adam described as sort of a radical way of making books, and that he started more than 10 years ago with the book sprints method, for me is really the only method I know of making books. And the way we do it is in collaboration and in 5 days in a sprint format. So here, for example, you see a group of people and one of our facilitators that made a book in 5 days. The way we do it is there's a lot going on at the same time. There's a very intense collaboration going on. There's sort of a dissolving of the roles. People are authors, they're peer reviewers, they review each other. It's a very iterative way of writing a book and very collaborative. It's actually co-authored. And this process could be very chaotic, but it's very well coordinated because we have this methodology, and most importantly, we have a facilitator who really makes sure that the group goes through the process, does all the necessary steps. Everything is conceptualized, structured, drafted, and then goes through an iterative process of editing. So here you see a few examples. We've been working with United Nations, with the World Bank, with different large organizations, but also with a lot of academics, academic publishers, researchers, and so on. Here are a few examples just to sort of give you a story of the background. This book, Nameless, was written during another pandemic, the Ebola crisis, by a group of bloggers and gender activists and climate scientists in Nigeria. And they came together for 5 days to write this book about how they imagined Nigeria should be after the elections. They had a lot of time pressure because the elections were coming up. They wrote the book in 5 days. They printed it on the Friday, and then the next week they presented it at the book fair in Nigeria. This is another example. We just did this in the beginning of March with the Technical University of Berlin. It's a group of campus managers, architects, and other researchers interested in sort of campus design and creating more hybrid campuses. They already had a publisher involved in the project before they started writing the book, and it was also published within written in 5 days, published within just a few weeks. And here's another one, maybe one last one. This is an interesting story. It's published by Haufe, which is a very large publisher in Germany, but they also have in-house teams that do business consultation. And the business consultation team didn't trust their own publishing processes because they knew they were much too long. So they did a book sprint instead. They called us on a Monday and they said, we have to start writing this book next Monday. It's the only time our team can come together. So we went there just the week after. They wrote a book in 4 days, and then they could publish it in their own in-house publisher right away and have it available. And then maybe the most radical one, of course, Adam's radical optimization of publishing. We did a book on Editoria, which is a collaborative writing and rapid book publishing platform that the Coko Foundation is developing. And we sprinted this book in 3 days, and then it was printed overnight. And the next day at the Editoria meeting in San Francisco, we unboxed the box of printed books, and it's beautiful, it's illustrated. It's copy edited, it's peer reviewed, and it's written by the experts, by a group of 12 people who are actually developing and working and being the end users of the platform. The quality is really high. The peer review is basically, we also try to avoid that term. It can mean very many different things, but the review process is sort of built in the process. The authors themselves also are reviewers, and everything is very iterative and checked 3, 4, 5 times. And we do this also with Google, as you see here, with a lot of software companies, with international organizations, with governments and universities most of the time. We now do this fully virtual. It started with having a few participants who joined us online. Like this one happened just at the start of Corona. So one participant already wasn't allowed to travel. The others were still brave and got together. And since then, we have moved to do these book sprints fully virtually. So we meet with a group of writers online and still go through a very intense process of everyone writing and editing together. And the book is still done by the end of that sprint and published right away. We don't just have the facilitator in the room, we also have, or in the virtual room, we also have a team in the background. So we have copy editors. Here, this is the book sprints team at the latest team meeting more than a year ago. We have a group of facilitators. We have copy editors who sit in different time zones in New Zealand and South Africa, for example. So whenever the writers, the experts finish one day of writing, our copy editors do a night shift, day shift, to go through the entire content, do light corrections and feedback back to the group. Although it's quite a different style of what you may have in other editing roles. It's very much sort of adapted to this rapid process. We also have a team of illustrators who are incredibly fast and incredibly flexible, so they can really work with a lot of different styles. Whatever the groups we work with come up with, they can turn around immediately. So that also happens during the same 5 sprint days. Any idea that comes up in the group is turned into an illustration within minutes or hours. And that's also often iterative, goes back to the group. There's some feedback until everyone finds sort of a common style and until everything is in the way the group wants it. So you don't have anything that you have to take care of after the sprint. There's no more back and forth and like now we have to check the illustrations or anything. That's already done. The entire group of writers has already approved all of that. One of our illustrators just had his baby yesterday. You can see him there in the background, Henrik. Congratulations to Henrik.
Yeah.
So for us, it was interesting because we were, as this team, we were already working fully remotely. And now we also work with the writers and the experts in the room fully virtually. And take this as sort of the next step of seeing how we can optimize the workflow and really try to get books done in the fastest way possible, but still keeping the highest quality possible. And it's really possible through the intense collaboration and the facilitation.
Great, thanks, Barbara. And I think one of the things to point out here is that the book sprints process goes from 0 to book in 5 days, and that means that when the group enter the room, they've been explicitly told that the only thing that they're allowed is a title, and then they work through conceptualizing as a team, conceptualizing, structuring, writing, editing, reviewing, and then the book sprints team helps with copy editing, illustrating, and then formatting it into a book. So you have a book formatted PDF or electronic book ready to go. So I mentioned that because when I first started book sprints some years ago, I was mainly the only one that thought it was possible. And it took me about 4 years to work it out. And once I'd worked it out and sort of got a handle on it, and I was working with software manuals at the time, floss manuals, and I remember telling people, well, look, we've done it. You know, we can write a book in 5 days. We even, and they say, oh yeah, but it's not very good. But one of the books that we wrote actually in 2 days, which was Introduction to Command Line for the Free Software Foundation, is considered one of the best books on the topic. So so people changed their criticism to, well, sure, you can do it for software manuals. We always knew that was possible, but nothing else, And so that was quite a challenge. That was like throwing me a bone. So we, went through everything. And the very first one that I did, not software, was Open Oil, how to read and understand oil contracts, with a room full of high-level oil and extractive industries lawyers, from activists to government organizations to oil companies to teachers. And I was terrified, not knowing any lawyers in my life, and that book has become the go-to industry standard for information about how to read and understand oil contracts. And it's been downloaded hundreds of thousands of times, and it's also been printed and given away by the thousands at many conferences, and has been seen on the desks of ministers of extractive industries in various countries as well.
And
so it's kind of astonishing. Yeah,
translated into at least 11 languages.
Yeah, exactly. And this was written in 5 days, right? So, we've proven the point. And even now, when people join a book sprint, if they haven't been through one before, they often don't think it's possible. And then they come out the end of it, and it's they're kind of evangelical about it, transformative for them. So I say this not as a kind of bragging rights, but to just point out, that what sounds crazy is quite possible, but it requires some bravery. In my case, the bravery was committing to not making much money for many years. But, for a journal to undertake this thing, they really have to look it square in the eyes and understand the consequences of what it means for their culture, their working culture. It will mean quite a transformation, but it would be radical. And I think we can achieve astonishing things if we were to embrace a new way of working. Now, one of the things I want to talk about briefly before we open it up to general conversation is the role of technology in this. And the role in technology really is just kind of to get out of the way, right? We don't want incumbent technology that dictates a very linear, gated way of working with highly delineated roles, things like this. We want just very simple platforms that can enable fast iterations and improvements on a document and facilitate communication. And I'm just going to point to one platform. This is one that's currently under development in Coko, just to sort of give you an idea. It's called SimpleJ. It's a journal platform. It's a modern journal platform. But the features that SimpleJ embraces are things such as automatic conversion to HTML from docx, so you can upload a docx file and automatically converts it to HTML and displays it as an article within an editing environment. And I'll show you a little bit about that in a second. It has real-time chat, and which is persistent, so that various actors can talk to each other and resolve things very quickly. One of the things that I've discovered is that protocols and decision making will often put a lot of air into workflows, and if you can just quickly ask somebody a question rather than building in a kind of rule-based process for coming to that decision, you can actually move very fast. And in these kinds of environments, you also have an article of record, which is the chat itself. So, we have to remember that, conversation is an important part of these processes, and we've taken it out of the processes largely. And if we can put it back in, we can really achieve a lot of efficiencies. And one of the things I do as a thought experiment for myself, or I asked journal publishers to consider, just to go with it for a moment and say, well, if you were to make the processing of an article as fast as possible, let's say within a day, how would you do it? And there are a lot of caveats around this. But one of the ways you could do it is if you had a printer, some paper, the reviewers, the authors, and the facilitating journal staff in the same room. Now, a lot of academics will think, well, you're crazy, that's never going to work. But you can imagine, let's just imagine that everyone acts nicely and kindly and they work together. You can see that just passing this paper between each other and just working organically without any heavily regulated process, you could actually process a document relatively fast. Or very fast, I would say. But that's just as a thought experiment, as I was saying. The other thing is SimpleJ is incorporating live video so that you can make calls between participants as well. In these times of real remote working that we've been forced into, that's an important part of the process, to feel connection to people, obviously. And the ability to spin up one-to-one calls is very important. And then here's a screenshot of the editor, which is, this is actually Wax 1. The SimpleJ has this editor Wax 2, which supports concurrent operations. And this is one of the things I think academic staff may find quite horrifying, which is to be able to concurrently edit the document itself, so that the authors might be in there at the same time as somebody else who's trying to improve the document is in there, be they a reviewer who might actually be contributing to the improving of the content, or a copy editor. Now, once again, all of these things are very difficult for many people to imagine, but I think if we really want to step up and meet the current crisis in academic publishing, processing to process documents quickly and have them validated, have good content coming out, then we have to step up and realize that that means a radicalization of the current workflows, and we're going to have to think not just about incrementally improving workflows, but doing something a lot more bold. So this is a framing for emergency response publishing. Is something that Coko's kicking off at this moment, and we're looking for partners to collaborate with that are bold partners, that people that are willing to square off on this problem and really, suck it in and work with us, either to collaboratively build the platform, which is mostly there, or to work with us to radically optimize the workflow should they be a journal publisher or a new entrant into the market. And I think we can really achieve great things by doing this. It's not only this current crisis where these things are important, but I think this is actually really important overall for publishing, especially open access publishing, to make our workflows more efficient and radicalize them, because not only does it mean that we can actually get content out quicker, but it actually means, of course, that we hope that we may be able to reduce processing time and the costs that are associated, the time-based costs that are associated with that as well, publishing staff, essentially. And in the time we're all about to be pressed by a recession, I think these things become sharper into focus. So this is the framing. If you want to contact me about this, you're more than welcome to. and my details are here, but I'll just open it up. If nobody wants to ask anything, then Barbara, you and I can maybe have a little chat. But if anyone's listening to this, I'd like to use their microphone to just start a conversation or to put something into the chat, you're more than welcome. I think somebody wants the link to the SimpleJ source. I mean, Julian, maybe you can put something in. Sorry, somebody was about to say something.
No, I unmuted myself.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I have a question for you. So after developing the book sprints method and now working on journals, do you see any major differences? I mean, obviously there are many, but where do you think sort of what radicalization? I mean, a lot of what you say about the technology and the processes, I think they apply to both, but maybe there's something about journals that is different and that needs even more speed, I think, in a way than books do.
Yeah, well, I think that the difficulty is largely in the thinking and the sense of ownership that researchers have over the content, that and this a little bit, yeah, I think that's the most difficult thing. And also on the publisher side, getting publishers open to the idea of thinking about the process of processing a document as being a collaboration. I mean, I think we can talk, collaboration is like, snow. There should be 30, 40 different words to describe collaboration. So it's probably many people listening to what I'm saying and saying, well, we do collaborate. I'm thinking about a much deeper kind of collaboration. I mean, you cannot build, put a book out the door in 5 days without building immense trust amongst all of the participants. We say in book sprints that people have the mandate to change anything. They don't have to ask permission. And yet, it takes a little bit of time for people to get used to that. But once they actually see the utility of it, and actually one thing that, and maybe you can speak to this, Barbara, one thing that I think we've seen is that people get excited when they see their content being improved, and they didn't necessarily expect that to happen.
Yeah, we especially with academics, but in general, there's always a little bit of a first barrier to overcome, having this permission of editing text without having to discuss it. And it's always, in every case, much harder for the person who's editing than for the person who wrote the initial draft. And they're already working on a different chapter, and they're often very happy. They say, oh, I wrote this so quickly yesterday. If you can improve it, please go ahead. And of course, that doesn't mean that there isn't space to have discussions on real content differences. But 90% of the things that come up are really just improving the text, and people are very happy to be edited and don't necessarily want to go back and then having to accept all of the changes. So we don't even do track changes or anything like that. The ownership goes on to the next person, whoever is working on it next. And yeah, like you said, as soon as people sort of get used to that and see that it's working, and also, like you said, in this environment of a lot of trust and people working very closely together, and there's space to bring up any discomfort. It's not just sort of like, shushed away. There's sort of space for that, and it's being addressed. Then it works so well that a lot of the people who've been through the process once, they say that it really changes their work styles in general. It's an opportunity for them to overthink. Not just publishers, people in any kind of environment, researchers, academics, people working in NGOs, writing reports and so on. They often come back to us and say, oh, we're going to use like this and this and this method and everything that we learned this week and apply it to our own work processes. And I think the sort of the radicalness and the courage that you described, it's not just sort of for you as the founder of the method, no, it's for everyone who goes into the process for the first time. It takes a lot of courage, giving up that control and ownership. And once they've been through it, most people are really converted and say it changes the way they work.
Yeah, but it can be hard for people. And as we sometimes also say in book sprints, the two hardest types of people to facilitators sometimes. Facilitators, because they keep getting on top of the process, which is difficult when you are the facilitator. You want people to stay within the process. And then the other one is academics, because they don't like letting go. And so, you know, but we've worked with them, and I've seen amazing transformations in academics specifically.
Yeah. And the people who struggle most are the ones who are then most affected by it, no? Because they really see a different work style and love it.
Yeah, we've both seen some amazing turnarounds with regard to that. So Luann, I think, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong. How does it fit with the Invest in Open Infrastructure? We haven't really, initiative, we haven't really had anything to do with them so far. I mean, I know they released, there's been reports that are written about, landscape reports. Educopia put one together, Mellon put one together with John Maxwell from Mind the Gap. I think these are informing the strategies of Invest in Open and others. And in those, you know, I think we mentioned probably more than anyone else. So I say that because I think we're an important part of the open infrastructure environment. We're community-owned infrastructure. We work very hard at building community around all of the products and processes. So I guess I'm waiting to some extent for open infrastructure to sort of signal what they're doing or approach us and talk to us about things. Okay, so Jamie's, do you want to speak, Jamie, into the mic?
Yeah, that's okay. Good to meet you both, and like really love the approach that you're talking about. So my background is both journals and books publishing. I've moved into a different role recently. What I was interested to, I did a lot of work in the past about efficiency and workflows, and we found that like you said, culture and technology both got in the way, actually. Within a publishing house, the structure of the business tended to predict who owned which part of the process, and that was something we had to break down quite rapidly. But technology was, especially where we bought from vendors, was very linear as well. I was going to ask, when you've worked with, especially say in this case, journal publishers, have you found resistance there? Because that quite surprises me.
Oh, I mean, yes. I mean, we exist to transform the workflows of largely journal publishing. That's why Coco's sort of came into existence, and you know, we've had some effect, but you know, I think it's not going to surprise anyone to say that the sector changes relatively slowly, and I think that's understandable because, as you point out, you know, a lot of the legacy softwares are less workflow enabling softwares than tracking softwares. They are not very dynamic. And also, once you're in them, it's very hard to get out of them because it's a huge cost to migrate from one system to the other. And not only that, I think one of the things I've discovered working inside the journal world is that I see these dysfunctional workflow systems. I don't even like calling them that, as like a stone in a shoe. And you know, once you have a stone in the shoe, you know, and you can't, if you don't get it out, you just put up with the pain and you learn to walk differently. And I think that's what journal publishers have done. What I've seen is that they've populated the staff to make up for the deficiencies of the system, and then they've also augmented with other ad hoc systems, wikis, Google Docs, spreadsheets, whatever you like. And so when you talk about changing the workflow, you're talking about changing the staffing, you know who's employed, what they do, and not just the technology cost. And so, you know, making a change is a real headache, and you have to be really brave to do it, I think. So I don't think it's fair. I understand that position. I understand that difficulty. So yeah, I have sympathy for it, but at the same time, I think sometimes we just have to sort of, you know, front up to the challenge. I don't know if that answers your question, response.
I totally agree with you. I think there are multiple factors to consider here as well. I was just really more interested in, have you experienced resistance, like real resistance, or is it resistance to the fact that there's a lot of change that's necessary?
Sorry, you cut out there. Have we experienced resistance?
Yeah. core resistance, as in, is it resistance to changing the processes and the technologies, or is it just the resistance that, the typical thing in big organizations where it's the enormity of the task?
I think somebody, I can't remember the phrasing, somebody framed this for me as something about there's the desire to change but not the willingness or something, it's I think there's a lot of talk in publishing about changing, but those that are brave to front up because of all these other factors are few. So that's the way that I would frame it, and so I've often pondered whether the best target for new ways of working are new entrants. That's also another interesting strategy. So I think there's a desire to change, but I think that the actual fronting up and making it happen is few and far between from what I have seen, apart from incremental changes rather than radicalization. So somebody said, Henrik said, I wonder in the case of a classic academic paper structure, how it would influence the sprint approach and method. Yeah, I mean, this is a really, what we're trying to present here is not a fully baked solution, right? And neither Barbara or myself would say this is how you would do it. What we're saying is we've done it, this radicalization, and we've learned some stuff with book production, and it's real, and we've inspired other models like Book Dash was inspired by Book Sprints and their construct of having a methodology to produce children's books, which in 12 hours, and they've produced 140 of them, and so these things are really possible. That's what we're saying, and there are factors that are going to have to be encountered and overcome. And but the only way that you're going to do it, and I can speak directly from experience, is by doing it. As I said, it took me 4 years to work out the Book Sprints methodology in its entirety, and I wasn't really sure what I was doing or where I was going. I've learned a lot now about what a methodology is and what processes, what things to look at and tricks, and so I think we can do this in quicker time. But I don't think it's going to be straightforward. I think it's going to have to be a learned practice. So yes, things like structure would factor into it for sure. How exactly and how we overcome it, I don't know, but I just know that we can overcome it, definitely. Barbara, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, people often come to us and say, oh, can I sprint my PhD thesis in 5 days or something like that, right? And we say, sure, if you're allowed to write it collaboratively and your research is already done. Of course, in 5 days, you're not going to start a 3-year research project and then also write it up. But we did have cases where, Adam, actually, you facilitated this. Somebody was writing their PhD on collaboration, almost had their advisors convinced that you could write it collaboratively, but in the end, that didn't fly well. So they did a book sprint anyway with different labs and wrote a book in 5 days. So that was done much before the actual thesis, but it also was the basis then. It had a lot of case studies and interviews and so on that they could use as the basis. So of course you have to work sort of with the different structures that are around there. Like Adam said, it's not sort of a one-drop solution. You put 5 days on anything and then it sort of magically pops, but there's a lot that can be done, and we see there's so many changes happening in so many ends of the whole publishing workflow. Like open access is one of them. So if you sort of can change a little bit here and a little bit over here, maybe something can really happen in the overall structure of it.
Yeah, and once again, I think we need to front up to this and be bold about it and be prepared to break things. I mean, we really need to unstick this, is my feeling, and we can't be timid about it. You can't radicalize things one step forward and 2 steps backwards kind of approach for moving slowly. You have to really own the fact that this is you're going to have to do things that feel uncomfortable. You're going to have to trust things and go with it, and then be prepared for it to fail at points, right? And be prepared to keep going. I mean, there's a kind of I'm not being pessimistic here, because I think we can get a lot of successes. If we had, a journal publisher that came in and said, I'm just going to do it, let's go. I think it'd be surprising how quickly we'd be able to do something pretty amazing. But you're also going to have to deal with the learnings at the same time. You're just going to have to. It's not. There's no pre-built recipe for this. Yeah. So I think Enrique says thanks for paper sprint approach and a lot of potential. Yeah. Anybody else? Thank you so far. Jamie, I'm not sure I answered your question directly. You're more than welcome to email me and we can set up a call. I'd be very happy to do that. Same with anybody else. And once again, we're looking for bold collaborators that want to, partner with us in any capacity to try and move this forward.
I can say maybe a sentence about resistance in publishers regarding books. We spoke at a lot of publishing conferences and with a lot of publishers, and the interest in the sprint method is huge. I mean, everyone knows there's a problem, and everyone's looking for new solutions. But there definitely is resistance in the sense that our conversations only ever go this far. Really making the step and trying it out and going a different model there's definitely resistance to it. Not just restricted to emergency situations. Yeah, for sure. We have in the case of book sprints, books that take 5 days to write, but they may take 2 years to prepare until you have the exact group of experts together and they really all can come together in one room. And then it's done, but it's something that the value is not just in sort of the quickness, it's really also in the collaboration. So it's a book that can only be written by having all of these perspectives in the same room and really working it through together. So for those groups, it's not even about the speed at all. It's really more about the power of collaboration.
Yeah, and you don't have to know each other. You can also do it remotely. I mean, it's it's a matter of the context, working a methodology to fit the context. And I think that's something that we're ready to do in terms of the learning that we've had from book sprints and working inside the publishing machine for a while. But once again, it's not for the faint-hearted, but I do think it's necessary. Jamie, please email me, and I'd love to make contact and have a coffee. That would be really fantastic. Great. Anybody else before? I think we may be having COVID girls in about 10 minutes joining in.
Yeah,
I don't know.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. I don't know if anyone has seen COVID girls Super Queen performance from the Philippines. Just absolutely unbelievably good. They've been performing every night at the festival, and we invited them to jump into this room and perform straight after us. So really recommend hanging around. They are amazing. Okay, anybody else? Sorry, Barbara?
I just got a message from one of the COVID girls that she can't open Big Blue Button. Her browser is supporting it. So I wonder if we should switch back to another room.
Yeah, maybe do that. We use their old Zoom one, and maybe Julian, I think Julian is still in the call. He can update the link.
Julian, do you have the link here?
Yeah, I think Julian is. Yeah, I think, if you have it, send to Julian. Great. I don't see any other questions. Really appreciate anybody who wants to email me or either to pull the idea to pieces. That's always useful for improving it, thinking about things. Never let it get in the way of actually doing things. Even with not everything worked out, I think it's really necessary to power on and work out a way to do this. So please email me if you would like to just have a conversation, to be part of it, or to disagree. You're more than welcome. Always up for talking about this. Particularly interested anybody that would like to partner with us in any capacity to move this forward. That would be fantastic. I think Enrique is typing.
You still have the Zoom link from before? Is it the same every day?
Okay, great. I think that's it. I think COVID Girls is actually going to be in their own Zoom room. So we'll leave them to that. You'll have to refresh the calendar and check that out. Well worth checking out. Thanks to you, Barbara. You're a wonderful colleague, and you do amazing work at Book Sprints, and I really appreciate you taking the time to join into this conversation.
Thank you, Adam, for setting this up. It was great fun. And yeah, everybody highly invited to join the COVID Girls. It's they're really one-of-a-kind performances, some of the best drag queens in the world, and it's great fun. Thank you for the link, Julian.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a good rest of the festival. Really nice to be chatting with you all.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks, Barbara.